Welcome to another edition of Rugby Southwest Saturday. I'm your host, Ed Nunez, joined by my right, my co-host, Carl Hawkins, and also a new addition to our staff who joined us for some commentating this week at the Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta, Heather Prinsloo. And Heather, you had a great time out there. You saw a lot of great rugby. I wasn't able to make it. Carl wasn't able to make it, so we're kind of blindsided and depending on you to tell us what happened out there. And I'm gathering you had a lot of fun. You got the every time I watch rugby, I'm just new to the game. I'm learning a lot from both you and Carl. I love those accents, man. So you got a South African accent. I just love the accent. We don't have those accents. So right away you bring some credibility to the broadcast, not only with that, but your knowledge of the game. So you want to tell us a lot about what happened out there this weekend at Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta?
Sure. Well, thanks, Ed, for the introduction at first. Yeah, it was a great day. A bit windy, a bit nasty weather, especially towards the end. But there were a lot of people that came out to watch those state championship games, and it was good fun. So I guess we can get started with looking some of the material.
And our guys have in our crews gonna get at the games up there. You go ahead and start telling us.
So the first game was a consolation game. There was the New Mexico Youth Rugby State Championships for the boys. It was a 15s game between the Dukes, the Albuquerque Dukes, and the Eagles. That game got quite out of hand towards the end there, with the score running up to 47-17, and that would be in favor of the Eagles. The game started out pretty equal, till just, I would say, about 10-15 minutes after the first half ended, and it just looked like the Eagles were the fitter side on the pitch. The Dukes struggling a bit with, especially with handling, defensive structures. Just got out of hand towards the end of the game. As you can see, Caleb scoring a try, then number 10.
So the Dukes are in yellow and red?
Correct. The Dukes were in the yellow and red, and the Eagles were playing in the white jerseys. And like I said, toward the last 20 minutes of the game, the Dukes just had trouble keeping up with the offloads from the Eagles players. They had good handling. They attacked out wide and just really almost tore apart the defense of the Dukes there.
What was the final score of that, Heather?
That would be 47 to the Eagles and 17 to the Dukes.
And that was a consolation game?
Correct. So that would mean that the Eagles ended in third place, and the Dukes ended in
who did
fourth
they
place.
lose to in the preliminaries?
I'm actually not sure. I wasn't able to watch that game. I heard that they lost by 1 point though.
Whoa.
And I'm sure
I think it was Rio Rancho.
Yeah, 1 point to Rio Rancho?
Yeah.
Well, Rio Rancho certainly was the team to beat this season, it seems like.
But you mentioned the Dukes had some trouble with the defensive tactics, or I'm sorry, you mentioned...
They did. It seemed like they bunched up. See, they have quite a few very athletic players that get around the pitch, but I think they tired those players out by just letting them do too much. And the previous game that I watched between these two teams earlier this year, the Dukes beat the Eagles quite easily in that specific game.
A reversal of fortune.
So this was almost a grudge
Payback,
match. Yeah, but watching the game was really nice. During little breaks and stuff, the boys would chat with each other. It was just some good camaraderie between these two teams. So no hard
at all. Now I got to tell you this. I talked to Marty Watts and Jamie Schwayback about that, and camaraderie amongst rugby players, not only here, locally, nationally, internationally. That's the thing I love about that, because I was a basketball player, and there's a lot of there was no when there's no chatting, there's going to be some and even rivalries existed even years later. So finally you let it go.
Yeah.
But I love the camaraderie that the rugby players have. Marty Watts told me that he moved to Chicago and found a rugby group and befriended them, and it sounds like just such a great camaraderie and getting together, even when there's handbagging, as Carl says, on the field. Afterward, everyone's hugging each other and going to the local brew pub and have a couple beers.
That's true. So as soon as the whistle blows, as
soon
soon as the whistle blows, everything's serious,
over.
and when that's over, the boys will get together and.
Plus, you have to remember, Ed, when you watch a rugby game, they're knocking the tar out of each
other.
Sure.
And
you basketball players never got to really do that.
Well, no, not legally. There's something that the refs didn't pick up either. But it's not the same thing. That's for sure. I think we got some highlights of some other games that our guys are going to show us here.
So let's run through all the games that happened. After that, it was a consolation game between the Mesilla Valley Heat and the Albuquerque Hermanitas. That was also a consolation game, sevens match for the girls. The game turned out to be very scrappy initially. My fellow commentator Aaron Rivera mentioned that he thought that there might be a bit of nerves involved, and so the game certainly started out to be very messy. And as you know, sevens being a 14-minute game, 2 7-minute halves, there's not a lot of time. If things start to go sideways, there's not a lot of time to fix that up. Yeah.
Just explain again, Header, the difference between sevens. You just mentioned that. You said 2 14-minute halves. Any other differences that our viewers need to know about?
Correct. So as you can see on this clip here, there are quite a few less players on the field than the previous game that we saw. So in the sevens version of rugby, there are only 7 players a side, and the halves are also only 7 minutes, except for in a playoff game or in a final, like we're seeing now. In these finals, the games typically go up to about 10 minutes.
Okay, that's definitely something I think the viewers, again, a lot of people don't have the rugby knowledge that yourself and Carl Hawkins do, so that's a great explanation there. I don't know if you want to keep talking about this game.
Of course. So
when you say scrappy, you mean
look at this play right here.
There was a lot of errors in play and drop ball and things like that.
So
whereas in the U.S., when they say scrappy, they think that the handbags are flying.
Oh, I see. So in this case, no, it was just a matter of girls trying to make offloads, trying to get the ball passed during contact, and it just
Ed and I've explained that to Ed on a couple of different occasions where we've watched games where there were high pressure games, and at the beginning of the games, just terrible mistakes all over the place, and you're just wondering what's going on.
We got about a minute left, about 45 seconds left in this segment. So I don't know if you want to keep talking about what you saw out here.
Sure. Well, let's say something else about sevens. It's a very open game. There's a lot more room to run around, so it makes it very exciting for the spectators. And as you guys probably know, the USA Eagles will be competing for in the Olympics for sevens.
That was mentioned on a previous, I think, a couple of shows ago.
That's right. We had on the women's USA sevens team for the Olympics. We have an Albuquerque UNM grad is on that team. Jamie talks about her on several different occasions. I don't remember her name.
We're going to take a short break, but first, take a look at Dave and Buster's top 10 plays of the week. Welcome back to Rugby Saturday Southwest. I'm your host, Ed Nunez, joined by Carl Hawkins to my right. In the center here, Header Prinsloo. And Header, man, in the break there, boy, got some good information about you. But you were out there again at Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta Park on Saturday. Some great breakdowns in the first segment about what you saw. Now we're going to move on to the championship bracket and let you go ahead and roll since you were out there.
So let's jump right into it. The next game was a 10s game for the state championship between the Los Alamos Nukes and the San Juan Spartans from Farmington. This was a very exciting game. The Spartans lost this game to the Nukes. It was an interesting game. First half, the Spartans were dominating physically. Just from an attacking point of view, they were scoring almost all of their points that they got in the first half. And then the Nukes on attack just did not seem like the players were clicking. They were trying to make offloads during the tackles. Almost not a single pass didn't went to hand in the first half. So I think there were some nervous moments for the coaching staff of the Nukes in that first half. But then, I could hear Demetrio Cardiel talk to his team during halftime. A hard-talking man. Hardened rucker.
He doesn't need a PA system.
No. You mentioned him to me. Okay, go ahead, Header.
Anyway, and I think he really psyched up his team, and in the second half, they just took over, scoring almost all their points and running up a big score of 36 points, like I said, beating the Farmington Spartans by 36-29 then.
Well, it's a close game, but I want to ask you this, Header. You said that the coach really hard-talking guy. What adjustments? I mean, ball handling better the second half. What was the key there?
I think there was less offload. So I think Demetrio would have told his boys, listen, let's not try to do the flashy stuff. Yeah, let's make the contact, reset the play, and build some phases. And exactly what they did. They're also more solid on defense. And not structurally, but I think the boys just showed a bit more guts. I think they were playing, to be honest. I think they were playing for Demetrio. They haven't won any championships, I think, in a long time, or even ever. I think this was their first state championship. So this was a fantastic performance by these kids. I've seen a couple of their games. They're really well coached. They ruck well. They've got the heart.
Their
they
fitness and really well supported by the community. I noticed that they have these great buffet layouts and everything. All the mothers and the sisters and the girlfriends are all there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really a family kind of affair, which is sort of symbolic of the way Demetrio is, right? He's a family man. He's a great family man, and he's a hooker.
Yeah.
So if you think that the passing isn't working, he's bringing it back in and he's keeping it tight.
Yeah.
That's
well,
his
he was
kind of game.
he was the first guy on the field when those boys scored the winning try and the whistle blew. He was the first guy on the pitch. He looked like one of the young family members, just running and jumping and running victory laps with the team.
He was excited as they were.
He probably was more excited, but
I remember the first rugby game that Demetrio ever played in. I was playing for the Aardvarks then, and he showed up, and we brought him into the game, and he was a wing or a back, and it took about 2 weeks, and we had him in the front row. He was there for, 25 years.
Well,
I think he's the longest
player
of all time.
And as you mentioned, a hard-talking guy, and you've mentioned that he doesn't need a PA system. Boy's got a booming voice.
He's a good dude. That's a
coach
he's at.
People probably want to play for, just like they would in baseball, basketball. Coach like that's going to bring the best out of you, sounds like.
Yeah, he's been coaching with the Aardvarks some too, hasn't he?
Yes, for the last bit of the season, he's helped us out. And it's really brought some physicality into our training, which I think prepared the boys for, especially the last game that we played against the Bruos, which was a back to the wall game. We had to win that game to be able to go to the playoff games.
I want to ask you a question real quick, Heather. You mentioned he brought some physicality to your training. What do you mean?
Well, we had a lot of kind of games we used to play in South Africa. Demetrio refers to them as racking games. In South Africa, we call it kopper stomp. It's pretty much where you just have a very small area and you just pretty much run into each other. Really works up your physical aspects of your game, get you fired up in that area, get you sharpened up. And so we did a lot of that stuff. And if you go watch the Aardvarks Bros game, you'll probably see our pack being really sharp around those racks and breakdowns.
I think that's a very important thing. Is again, remember, you and Carl have been around the game for a number of years. Our viewers may not understand rugby. I'm starting to get a basic understanding of it. There's still so much to learn, but I loved your explanations. People might say, well, what do you mean by that, physicality? Because people still think of football and this and that, and some of it, American football stole a lot of that, a whole bunch.
Yeah.
So people don't understand when you say physicality and training and conditioning, what is it you do? Things like that, because it's different from football, basketball, lacrosse. The whole thing is different.
Yeah.
And like Carl said, they're going out there to tear each other's heads off sometimes. But even when there's a play like that, usually if there's a rough play, I notice that people help each other up, pat each other on the back. Usually, Carl will say something on the broadcast.
As long as it's clean rough play, everybody's happy. Let's go back to this high school.
Let's go back to the highlights. Sure. Got a little sidetrack. Sorry about that, Heather. Go ahead.
Then the next game that happened on Saturday was the state championship game for the girls sevens, and that was the Albuquerque West Side Ruckus playing the San Juan Spartans. The Ruckus turned out to win that game by 20 points to 12. This was a very exciting game to watch, I have to be honest. I was on my feet a couple of times, in the
commentating booth.
I know, right?
You're in the broadcast header. There's not a lot of room to do that.
No, there's not a lot of room to jump up, but I was on my feet a couple of times. There were some big hits. Some of the girls just pummeled each other, some massive hits on defense. And it was just a very exciting game to watch. And this is about the same time that.
Wow! I'm sorry, Heather. Go ahead.
No, that's some great individual skill too. The girls showed some great pace, just some great skill, and I feel like a lot of the skills that I saw from some of these girls develop from soccer. I see a lot of kids playing soccer out there.
Good point.
Yeah, just the quick footwork and the agility. It's definitely coming from these other sports. I feel strongly about cross training, and I think doing as much as possible different sports certainly develop develop in a young person. And so skills that you pick up from basketball are very necessary in rugby. Skills that you pick up from football, soccer, all over the park. There are things that can help you be a better sportsman or sportswoman.
Yeah, I think that you see a lot of parents focusing their kids on single sports and getting them into programs where they're playing a single sport all year round. I think that's not a good way to go. I think you need to develop a lot of different skills and not really be so focused.
Burnout from one sport.
Oh,
I think kids are now. I say that about AAU basketball. They played till they were 7 years old. By the time they got to high school, they were already zipped. They were done.
Yeah.
I'm just tired of it.
And rugby
so I
teaches,
think you're right about that.
Rugby teaches you, it's an interesting sort of game to throw into the mix because it teaches you how to play offense, defense, how to be physical, and it teaches you tactical thought and the spatial component of, where's the empty space on the field that I can take advantage of and exploit. And so you're thinking all the time. And I think that's very valuable to any kid's, development.
We've got to take a short break. We'll be back with more of Rugby Saturday Southwest after these messages. Welcome back to Rugby Saturday Southwest. I'm your host, Ed Nunez. Joined by my right, Carl Hawkins in the middle, Heather Prinsloo, and Heather, great breakdowns of the championship segments at Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta Park last weekend. You must have had a good time. You said you stood up, man, and in that thing that we're on, the scaffold, I don't know how you did it, but you're a lot more athletic and young than Carl Hawkins and I are a little bit older now. We might have been able to do that when we were at your age, which was some time ago. Heather, we got one more championship segment to go to. Let's go to that.
Sure.
And you want to go give us a little background?
Oh, certainly I will. And this was easily the most exciting game of the day. Definitely a close game. So this was between the Rio Rancho Rebels and the La Cueva Bears for the state championship, like I said, in the final. Very close game, and as you can see there early in the game,
Rebels in red and black?
Rebels in red and black receiving an early penalty, and knowing that it was going to be a close game, they went for the 3 points penalty conversion. So both coaches clearly from the beginning of the game knew that this was going to be close. Like you said, I was on my feet a couple of times in the previous game, and even more so in this one. Very exciting stuff from some very, very talented young players.
It's nice to see kicking skills in high school rugby, huh?
Certainly, and I would say maybe a bit off point, but one of the best kickers that I've seen in this union playing for the Eagles, their 10. The kicking in this game, maybe the Rebels certainly having the more dominant kicker from the two teams, but just very solid defense from both teams. I think there was a time when the Rebels were defending their own try line for about maybe 15-20 minutes when the Bears were just attacking, building pressure, setting up phases, excuse me. And then almost exact reversal of that in the beginning of the second half, where the Rebels came back and did exactly the same thing. They were just, planted at the try line of the Bears. That was a very fantastic try.
What's that, 60 meters?
At least.
That is what I thought would be the winning try of the game. That put the Bears in front with very little time to play. This was in the dying minutes of the game, where Zach Dodd scored this try for the Rebels to win the game. Fantastic cover defense.
It's tackled there and still gets up there.
He put the ball loose, picked it up, and went in to score. Wow, what a finish.
So when I was sitting on the stands, that looked like a knock-on. And the referee and his assistant referee, Marco Sattini, got together to discuss that. And, everyone was waiting for their ruling to see if that was a try or not. And, unfortunately, we don't have a TMO replay to see what actually happened. And seeing it now again, you got to wonder, was that maybe a knock-on, and should that game have gone the other way?
Now, what did you think, Heather? Now, look, you've been around the game a long time. What was your thought when you saw that? What was your thought? I mean, the referees were there, but what did you think?
So for me, sitting on the halfway line, it's kind of difficult to see exactly where the try line is. And you got to know that we have some fantastic referees and assistant referees that are, they know how to position themselves, and they were in the perfect spot to make that judgment call. And from where I was sitting, it looked like it might have been a knock-on. I had a chat with Mark after the game, and he said that Zach scored that try before he let it go and the ball rolled forward. So Mark believed that was a try.
Mark Kaminsky, the referee?
That was Jim Kaminsky, was the main referee.
Line referee?
He was not really in position to see clearly. I believe he was kind of behind the players. And Mark, I think, made the call, and the try was awarded. And you know, you got to give credit to the Rio Rancho team and to Dave Bracken, their coach. They played really well. They've already beaten the La Cueva Bears earlier this season by 1 point. And you know, the La Cueva Bears got to feel maybe they've been robbed of that fourth state championship by a really good team.
They had 3 championships in a row, and actually they won the last championship on a last-minute play the previous year. So they've seen it both. They've seen both sides of that coin, haven't they?
And you're still young enough. You still play.
Yeah.
So plays like that, you know.
Very exciting.
Things I saw on you know, there's explosive plays in rugby. You just saw that. There's a bunch of them.
Yes.
People love it. Americans love explosive.
Yes.
They love explosiveness.
And I believe a lot of these kids, you know, their conditioning and their physicality, a lot of it maybe comes from football. And if you see that storming run from the La Cueva Bears center to score the try that I thought was going to win them the game, and that's just some really strong running. And I love to see one of those, you know, those kids come through and lift up the level of club rugby in the state.
And it seems like it is. Now, we got about a minute and a half left now. ProView Networks has been hired to call a tournament, rugby tournament here in a couple weeks in Tucson, Arizona.
It's the United States Club Championships.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah,
real quick, Carl?
they're in the. We're at the Sweet 16 point right now. There are 8 teams that are going to be playing in Keno Field in Tucson, Arizona, and 8 teams from the East that are going to be playing in Philadelphia and on Freedom Field, and those teams will play over the weekend of the 21st and 22nd, and the results will be that there'll be 1 team from Division 1, 1 team from Division 2, 1 team from Division 3 that'll be going to Glendale, Arizona, and that's both men and women in Division 1 and 2, and only men in Division 3. And to bring the folks that have been watching our shows up to speed on what's happening as far as Rugby Southwest is concerned, in Division 3, the team that we were all rooting for and our favorite, the Northern Arizona Land Sharks, who played magnificently here a couple of weeks ago, just a great game. They lost to the Orange County Ravens, 58-22.
Oh wow!
And it seemed like the news on that game and that we've picked up is that it was pretty close in the first half, but the Ravens ran away with it in the second half, so we take our hats off to the Land Shark. It was one of their great seasons, and I think they'll all admit that. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them come back.
That's pretty significant. 58-22. We got about 20 seconds left. Hedo, you want to wrap up this show, this segment? I mean, you've been great. Thanks so much for the breakdowns. They were great. Anything you want to add and wrap this show up with as far as Rugby Saturday Southwest this week's edition? Anything you want to say?
Sure. Well, I think if we can say one thing, it's congratulations to both teams who played in the finals for the boys 15s, the La Cueva Bears and the Rio Rancho Rebels. Both of those teams fantastically coached, fantastic players, and just congratulations to the Rebels. You played really well. You played well consistently throughout the season, and enjoy the championship.
What a way to win! What a way to win! That's going to do it for this week's edition of Rugby Saturday Southwest. For my co-host Carl Hawkins, for Hedo Prinsloo, I'm Ed Nunez. We'll be back next week with another edition of Rugby Saturday Southwest.